Now on today's video, I'm going to try to show how I made the brackets for basically mufflers, camera mounts, several other things that I've done on the bike collection that I have, the Humble collection. Muffler brackets are exactly the same as the camera brackets. Mainly how to bend the material without cracking it, how to get the scratch marks out or the hammer marks, and how to polish it up and make it very nice and professional looking. Now, it's about a half-hour video. If you're willing to invest a half hour, you'll see how I do it. I've tried not to leave out any steps. It works for any kind of bracketing you have to make, and it would work for anything beside motorcycling. But motorcycles, when you want to have custom camera mounts and custom mufflers, sometimes you have to make a custom bracket, and this is exactly how I do it. Now, one of the videos that I wanted to make for quite a while already, just didn't have the time. I got some time today to make it. I've had a lot of people ask me when we look at this bike, there's brackets on this bike made out of aluminum, and there's a couple of tricks I could pass on to how I've been able to make a lot of the bracketing for the bikes, and I'll just go through this real quick. This is one of the brackets I made in the time of restoring the bike and retrofitting the Norton mufflers. We've made brackets. In this case, these are the heel guards. I made these from carbon fiber. I made the camera mounts on the R1 from basically thin aluminum, and these I should make a different set out of thicker aluminum as a future project. But every bike here has some bracketing up here, and whether you're making a bracket that's going to hold a muffler or a bracket that's going to hold something like a camera, knowing how to make it and make it that it looks real nice. It doesn't look like a I don't know what. This bike, there's a bracket on this bike that most people don't even see. It's the one that holds the muffler. Now, the reason I made that from carbon fiber, the reason I needed that bracket is these are not the mufflers that belong on a bike. They're from an '86, and the mounting point was different, and it was a very difficult thing. It looks real easy when it's done, but to make it, very, very difficult. But we did this recently. We made this one in two pieces, so I could swivel this back and forth, swivel this back and forth, put it at different angles, turn it to face me, face forward, face sideways. We had one that I made on here that I don't use anymore because this turned out to be just a little bit too shaky. Best one I have made so far that I'm happy with is the one on the R1 that mounts right in the one spot that you can see forward, but you can still catch the edge of the fairing. And then the short ones that go on the handlebars, like the ones on the RD, these worked out perfect. I have that on the GS. So whether it's a camera mount or it doesn't really matter what it is, knowing how to make those brackets, it's not real high tech, especially these muffler brackets. A lot of good little tricks. Maybe I can pass a few of them on in the next couple minutes. So if you enjoy this kind of technology, I'm going to try to pass some of this on. Now, step one, no matter what bracket you're going to make or what the shape or size is going to be, it's always a good idea if you can take a piece of cardboard and make a pattern of what you need and then work from the pattern, rather than just freelancing it, drilling this hole and then finding out it should have been an 1/8 of an inch higher or wider. In this case, when I made this bracket, this was a triangle, and I had made it out of a piece of ordinary cardboard, and then realized that having this hole here is a critical location. It isn't, I can't move this back and forth because I have two holes here. So the trick here would be to drill these two holes, mount the bolts once you actually make the bracket, and I'm just trying to pass on random tips. Bolt these two in, put the muffler in place, and then from the back mark where exactly that hole is, because if this hole is off even 1/8 of an inch forward or back, this whole thing gets convoluted. So, but again, if you can, and even an even better way of doing it, if you have access to a piece of thin 1/8 inch plywood, because it allows you to really get the holes on center just perfect before you actually go in and start cutting. See, the problem is I don't have any real high-tech equipment. I have to cut everything out with either a hand saw or I have a little jigsaw, but it's a time-consuming thing to cut the aluminum. If you had $1 million shop, yeah, you could do it a lot easier. But even just making a little bracket like that, it's nice to know how to do it, because not everybody, see, when you do a motorcycle restoration, not everybody has all the little steps that make it as easy as it possibly can be. So we're going to try to pass some of this on. I didn't want to drill any holes in a motorcycle. See, one of the things, one of my, I don't know, little pet things is I don't want to make any part of the camera mounts that I can't just take it off and move it to another motorcycle, or take it off and say, that didn't work. As an example, is I don't want to drill a hole here and then say, oh, that didn't work out, and have a hole here. So I like to make every part of, and this is basically going to deal with, this afternoon I'm going to try to make up a little bit more sophisticated camera mount. This camera mount worked out well, except it did have some vibration issues. The rubber bushing made it a little bit better, not perfect. We're going to work on this in the future. We're going to try to come up with something a little bit better. I don't know what that is right now. But every time I make one of these brackets, I learn something that I didn't know before. This one worked out really, really nice. Now, I have noticed that the footage I get with this, even at those really high RPMs when the motor is at full wide open throttle, it doesn't vibrate at an annoying rate. And what happens, because basically my big fat rear end is pressing back on this, it absorbs a lot of the vibration. When I move forward in the seat, because the seat is rubber mounted, it tends to move a little bit. So these are the things that you have to kind of take into account. Now, I noticed another thing about bracketing. I had made this bracket, and this came with a rubber bushing in here on the stock bike. Well, when I had the rubber bushing and the Norton muffler, it had moved to a different resonance range. And in that new resonance range, right at about 10,000 RPM, it'd start doing this, and it'd make the camera shake. If you look at some of the old footage, you can even see that. When I had the side mounted, I had it mounted to one of these screws, I forget which one. It would be the same thing. It would just pick a resonance range and then start doing that. But again, because all of this body work is really rubber mounted. Now, what I want to do today, I really have been waiting to do this, and I want to make one. I want to take this rubber bushing out, make a bracket that's going to come out here so I can have the camera. I'd like to have the camera right about out here and just catch the edge of the fairing if I possibly can. You think this is, you think it's going to be easier. I also had a great idea. I wanted to use this. This is already threaded. I was just afraid until I can get somebody here to check that I'm not going to have a clearance issue, or make this come down, because I've seen footage that people have taken right off the fork. It looks really cool. As always, is to go into my, I call this my, I already tried that and it didn't work drawer. And we have plenty of things that didn't work that I've made over the years. But that's how you really get to be a smart guy. And I want to take a piece that I can use as a dummy pattern. I have that one. I have one that's a little bit longer. And the reason these have all been replaced, they're all made out of 1/8 inch aluminum, which really is not strong enough for a camera mount. We have this piece that I can maybe, I'm using these basically just for patterns. So if I have something I can use for a pattern, it saves me a lot of work. But if I don't, I can just take a piece of cardboard and make the pattern the shape I need. Another thing that's handy in the case of, because I've made a lot of these in the past for various projects, I call these spacers. The spacers, if I want to take this piece and mount it somewhere, and then I want to raise it up, raise it down, I can raise it higher, lower. Having some spacers, and what I always do, that's why this drawer is so full, anything I make that doesn't work, I always save it. And sometimes it's a reminder to me of just, sometimes I go back 2 years later and make the same thing that I made 2 years ago and found out it didn't work 2 years ago, and usually what that means, it isn't going to work now either. But I have made the same thing twice. Here's another one. That the purpose of saving all this, it's good for doing what I'm going to do right now, of patterning this out. Now, as an example, here's an old bracket. And I can see that if I make this at 1/4 inch, I want to make everything out of thicker material here. If I make that bracket there, that gives me a perfect lever arm, and I can make it infinitely long. And what this is going to allow me to do is if I want to tip it up, tip it down, but I do want to keep it horizontal. But so this bracket is basically right now, I'm thinking should be in 2 pieces. And the second piece should be, and I'm just using this for a pattern, if I bolt these 2 together like this, I got to make this a little bit longer to mount the camera to. All I need to do is, I'm using this for a pattern instead of making cardboard. So it's going to allow me to move this out a little further and then put what'll be my permanent camera mount out on the end. So we're basically going to make this part in 2 pieces. And the easiest way to do this is to make the first piece, bolt it in place, and then from that I can get a pretty good measurement of how thick the second piece has to be, how big. The only reason for the tape is if I had Lycum blue, I could put Lycum blue on here and scratch this all out. I don't really have to do that. It's not that kind of a job. This is not a machine shop job. You're not working in thousandths of an inch. But I do want to put a center line down here. By having a center line, just makes it a little bit easier to work. Now, another thing, when you bend aluminum, especially aluminum, there's a radius you can bend here before the material starts to crack. We'd like to have this radius big enough, and there's a lot of ways to make it. You can just put it in a vise and hammer it, which is usually the way that works the best. If you bend it by hand, the further out here, in other words, if you bend it from in here, you need a tremendous force. It'll bend a tighter radius. As you move your hand out further here, this radius gets bigger and bigger. So if you crack the aluminum in doing this, well, you've got to move this back and just accept the fact you need a bigger radius. You can't make this like a piece of angle iron because this aluminum, and especially the stuff you buy in Lowe's, is really a low-grade aluminum. It's not aircraft 6064 or 2024 or whatever. But it's good enough for what we're using it for, but it does tend to crack if you make too tight of a bend. So we're going to try to real carefully not make too tight of a bend. Now, having said that, I want to lay this out with enough room that I can get in there, because another problem is if I put the bolt hole right in the end, I'm not going to be able to grab this in a vise. So I'm going to leave a little extra material just so it's easier. I get a bigger footprint to grab in the vise. I'd like to have this hole about here. See, I can always go back and cut that off if I don't want that extra material on there. But for right now, that's fine. I know I'd like to bend about here, just roughly. And I know from having used this piece that I would like this to be just a little bit longer than the second hole. So this hole can be out here. And this is going to be the first part of our and I can basically leave plenty of material. I can, again, I always say it, I can always cut some off later. Grind it, cut it off. So that's the layout. And it's always easier for me. I like to drill the holes first. So the first step on this is going to be to drill the holes. Now, a couple of secrets to drilling any metal. You want the drill to turn at a slow speed. If you don't know, most drill presses have 8 or 12 or 15 speeds or whatever. You want the drill to be turning at a relatively slow speed. If you go too fast, it just makes it more difficult. I want to spot that hole. If we were doing a machine shop job, we'd have a starter drill. In this case, we don't need that. It's not that kind of a job. And I find if you spend too much time doing super precision stuff on something that doesn't have to be precision. Let me just show this. This is an interesting thing too. I want to pick this up off the floor. When aluminum comes out, this is telling you it's probably you've got the drill speed right and the cutting speed right, because it's taken out one piece. When you're just throwing crap all over the place, usually you've got the wrong drill speed or the drill is dull or whatever. When you see that big, nice spiral cut, you know you've got it pretty right. Now, even after drilling one hole, there's always, especially with soft aluminum, there's always a really razor edge. In our case, I don't want to have that razor edge there. The problem with that edge is when I go to clean or buff this or do anything, that's going to be a problem. So what I always have to do is, and it'd be nice if I knew where this was. For a couple of bucks, Harbor Freight, you can buy a tool. You can do it by hand. It just deburrs the hole. If you have a lot to do, you can put it in a drill press. Deburring that hole makes the polishing and the cleaning, the cleanup of the part later, that gives it a nice machine shop look. Now I've found that, and of course these are things I've tested in the past that I haven't used, but it's always a good idea to wrap a little bit of, this is Gorilla Tape, some kind of tape around there. It just minimizes the scarring from doing an operation like this. Now that's where I want to bend. See, what you can't do is just grab the end of it. That's not going to really work out well. I want to put this in the vise. Now the two choices I have is, if I were making a real high-tech precision thing, yeah, I could heat that with a torch and probably bend it. If I bend it, if I grab it up here and bend it, it's going to make too big of a radius. But this is the way that I get the radius just about right for this type of a product. And what's going to happen, it's going to scar the material some, but what's going to happen is I'm going to grind that away on the grinder before we do any polishing. Now let's pull this out. Now I can see I've got too tight of a radius. And because this is not going to be a problem, I'll just grind that away, polish it away. But if I were making a structural part, if this was going to hold something really solid, well, I wouldn't want that to be there. And see, all this scarring then has to come out, or else you have to go get some high-tech equipment and do it some different way. But the idea of doing this is that you can do it on a budget with a minimum amount of equipment. Now another thing, a hacksaw blade with the smallest possible teeth. And if you use the bigger teeth, it just takes longer to do the cut. The idea of doing all this is to do it in a very simple, easy to do way. It's a little more labor, but you don't really need a machine shop and you don't really need to have a CNC equipment. Or what you just do need is some energy. And in this case, we're not engineering up a motor mount or anything that's going to be a structural part, so this will be fine. The next step is going to be to take all the tape off and start to cut off these corners, get them radius just a little bit. The next step is just to break the corners on this. I don't want to have any sharp edges. They're good use for your old motorcycle gloves that are worn out. The idea of that was just to break the corner. The rest we'll do on the belt sander. Now the idea is to grind every surface that you're going to see, because we want to get out all those scarring marks. You can see how quick you can get rid of them. I also want to get rid of all the sides. Some of these parts have really taken a beating, literally a beating. It's like making a bottle of fine wine. There's a lot of steps. Anyway, we're at the point now we can go over to the drill press and get out the material that is going to put a final finish on this. Now, to get this ready for the buffing wheel, there's a lot of ways we can do that. A soft wire brush is a good choice. You can use these pads, these 3M pads. The purpose is to get it as scratch-free as possible, but I wanted to show this in real time. Now, this is basically the surface we're going to see. Everything else is really not that important. We're going to see this surface. For this operation, I'm using these wheels. Let me get one out here and show. Here's the little one. We have a little one and a big one. Harbor Freight, very inexpensive. And as you can imagine, this is what, if you're going to do a lot of polishing, you buy a 5-pack. This, I think, was $3. But they don't really last that long, but it doesn't matter. They're inexpensive enough. And there's no other way I know to get this ready for a polishing operation. Now for this, we want the drill press going as high speed as possible. The higher speed, the better. Once I got the scarring out, the big heavy hammer marks and everything with the sanding, now this I just want to get the scratches from the grinder out. And this will take a few minutes. There's no point belaboring it. I need to just work on it until I get the finish with as minimum scratches as possible. Now at this point in the project, the objective of everything we've done up to this point is to get rid of the scratches. Once you get rid of the scratches, and even if you did this, you can do this with sandpaper. You always want to start with rougher paper, get the scratches out, go to the next grade, the next grade. You want to wind up maybe with 1500 paper, or you can use the wheel, which it just seems to go a little faster for me. Now, there are 6 grades. I want to show these. Each grade of compound, and these are about $5 each. They do certain things, metal, hard metal, soft metal. They're all a different color. The blue, some of these, you know. Now, you could look at all the videos you want on YouTube about polishing. There's no substitute for go to the wheel, try each one, and see which one is going to give you the result you want. In this case, black is the most aggressive. I'm going to use black first, then probably finish up with the brown. If that doesn't do it, well, there's a lot of other choices. I can polish it by hand. But to go from this surface here, which is almost scratch-free, black will be the first one we try. You can see already just that one little thing on the wheel. It doesn't take long. Now, of course, I'll do the rest off camera. I'll do the rest of the whole part. It's going to take some time. Don't want to bore you to death. We'll come back to this part when this is done, and then we'll use this, bolt this to the bike, and then use this part to figure out the length of the other piece. That is our first piece, the first part of this project. I just got to get the fingerprints off of it. And being able to make parts like that, there's no fancy tooling, nothing you can't buy locally and very inexpensively. Because one of our objectives, of course, with all the projects is to keep the costs down, do as much of the labor as we can in our own shop, keep it simple, and do simple modifications that don't cost a fortune. Well, that worked out just about, well, not almost, that is perfect. You can move the motorcycle by it, so I suspect there won't be a lot of vibration. Now I just need to figure out the distance out here that I want to put the camera. And maybe if there is a way I can make it variable, and of course I can. I just need to think this through how I want to do it. And I'll repeat all of the steps that I did on this, make a pattern, make the part, polish it, bring it out, and then see how I can get the final adjustment on. This camera mount thing is an ongoing thing. It doesn't happen in one day. It doesn't happen in one afternoon. And you can always settle for just gluing it with a suction cup somewhere and waiting for it to come off in flight. I didn't have any luck with that. there's always ways you can use the store-bought parts, but I have had really good luck doing it this way. And the things I've learned, most important, don't use thin material, use the thicker material. And don't try to just make one and then be happy with it. I wasn't happy with this one. This one, as I've looked at the footage already, this one was a giant improvement over this one. And then, but the best one of all is the one on the R1. That one, I love the footage that comes off the R1. Other little tips that only take a second to share. You take anything apart, you throw anything away, take the bolts out, especially if they're metric. Buy one of these. The kit with all these little parts comes with it, buy 2 of them. They're $9 each, and you'll have plenty of things you can cut and make and bend and play with, much like what I'm doing right now. So now with that piece on there, it lets me adjust it forward and back a certain amount, up and down with my spacer if necessary. I could even lower it down even lower than this, higher than this. Gives me a lot of choices. This piece can flip over, it's symmetrical, and the part that has the bend can go the other way. So it's fully adjustable, and the only thing left to put on here is to attach that part that holds the camera. So are you impressed that I made this camera mount today? Uh-huh. You impressed? I thought you were going to help me. Look, you forgot to put a bolt in here. This piece comes right off. You got to put a screw in there. You going to help me? You sure? You sure? Ah! That's a MotoGP part. Pick that up, please. Put it back. It goes right up here. We got to put a bolt in there. And then we got to end this video because we have babysitting to do. Without a helper like this, how could I ever finish a project?
Like this.
No, I'll show you how it goes. Watch. It goes like that, out like this, and then we're going to put a bolt in there. Now tell everybody that watched your video, thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.
Okay. Now over the years I've made a lot of muffler brackets, camera mount brackets for other things, and so far I've been very lucky. None of them have ever failed in service. So I hope this information on this video is useful for you too. Now if you're new to our channel, we have a very, very eclectic channel. One of the new features we have now is some of the videos are grouped into groups that you can access all the videos for one category in one mouse click. And it should be very convenient and very handy. Just check out the feature on the main screen playlist. And thanks to everybody for supporting the channel. We appreciate your support, and it makes this channel possible with all the things we do, the painting, the wheels, the polishing. And please take a second or two and hit the like button. And thanks everyone for watching.